If you are an estate agent, letting agent, or someone who is interested in the property market, then this, the UK Property Market Stat Show, is for you. My name is Chris Watkin, and each week I'm joined by a special guest. This week it is the wonderful Bryan Mansell. We'll come to Bryan in a second. Why should you watch this show, ladies and gentlemen? Well, the property market is something that the British are obsessed with. And whenever the Land Registry or the Halifax or Nationwide throw some data out, it's front page news. The problem is that the Land Registry is looking at sales that took place 8, 9, 10 months ago. Nationwide and Halifax looking at sales that took place 2, 3 months ago. We're looking at last week, ladies and gentlemen. So if you want your finger on the pulse of the property market with regard to house prices and the general trajectory of the property market, then this show is for you. We're looking at week 16 of 2025, which is, I'll just pull up my calendar, Monday the 21st of April, which remember was an Easter Monday, all the way through and to include Sunday the 27th of April. This week I'm joined by Bryan Mansell, who's a regular on the show. Bryan was a regional director for Countrywide when they were a force to be reckoned with. It's a shame that they're not as strong. Okay. Bryan now is the boss man of Gazelle, a firm that helps estate agents out with fall throughs with his firm Gazelle. But as I said, we're not here to talk about that too much because we don't allow plugs on the show. Bryan, awesome to have you back on the show, mate. It's been a few months since I saw you.
Yes, pleasure as always, Chris, to have to be invited and be with your company. So many thanks for the invite again.
Bless you, bless you. For those of you who have not watched the show before, the show lasts approximately 1 hour. The first half looks at the UK property market, where Bryan and myself will analyse the stats from last week, year-to-date figures, and compare that with other years. The second half is where we go to a town or a city and really deep dive in the estate and letting agent population. This week we're going to Newport in Wales. Now, if you're not from Newport, you might find that awfully dull and boring. But what I would say is this: the bit of kit that we're going to analyse the estate agents in Newport and the letting agents is a bit of kit that you could utilise yourself to make yourself look absolutely awesome. You see, the bit of kit we're going to be using will show you which estate agents are overvaluing, which estate agents are not very good at selling houses, the ones that do shed loads of price reductions, the ones that don't sell many houses. We're doing a bit of lettings as well. So if you are an agent that suffers from overvaluing, cheap fees or anything else, then you might want to watch that element of the show, because the bit of kit we're going to be using is something that you could use yourself. Anyway, Bryan, without any further ado, let us go and have a look at the stats. First off, ladies and gentlemen, we always start with listings because they are the lifeblood of our estate agency. Should be able to see that, Bryan. Can you just confirm you can see the graph on the screen? So year to date, we are on 587,891 listings, which compared to last year is 6% ahead of last year, 9.2% ahead of 17, 18 and 19, and 15.7% ahead of the 9-year average. Okay. This is the weeks plotted on a week-by-week basis. The white line is 2025, and then again you've got all the other years of 18, 20, 23 and 24. The red line is 2024. Now, the first thing that you'll notice is that white line, it has gone down, and I just want to remind you, ladies and gentlemen, that it was Easter week. And if you can see here, and again we'll just confirm this is the weeks that Easter took place. So yes, there's always a drop, and there's always when it comes to listings during Easter week. We'll have a bit more of a chat on that in a second with Bryan. The average asking price of a property coming on the market, 465,000. And again, there's the listings compared to the other years on a standalone basis. What's your thoughts, Bryan?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's great to get the Easter week because obviously, as you've just quite rightly pointed out, there's always a bit of a drop, which, you know, when you have reasonably decent weather as we've had as well, that just adds fuel to that fire. But I think there's lots of reasons to be optimistic about this, about the start of the year we've had. I mean, we're into quarter two, and quarter one was pretty strong. So, you know, the word that I wrote down, whenever I look at statistics, numbers, figures, results, that sort of stuff, I always tend to summarize my feelings in one word initially, and it's optimism. optimism is the word. Yeah.
But
If
we
you've
put
got stock on the shelves, the old saying, you can't sell what you don't list, right? So if you've got the listings, you've got the stock, you've got people who want to move, then that's the lifeblood of the business of the property industry. So it's a good sign.
What is particularly interesting, I find, with regard to the Easter break is that we've got two bank. Can you believe it? This coming weekend, this is coming out on Friday,
Yeah,
uh, is a bank holiday. So actually, it's been a long time since we've had Easter and a bank holiday.
yeah,
So I've got a strange feeling that next week's also going to be subdued because we've got two dips close together. What you tend to find there is that there's a second dip later on in May when we have the late May bank holiday. But if you look, the level of the dip is very similar to the level of the dips that we saw in other years. It's just that the number of listings this year, as we said, is slightly higher. But like a tide, just everything, it's just the tide moves up and down, but the drop remains roughly the same. So not too concerned on
Yeah,
that.
Chris, just something I want to say about this actually, and I was thinking about this when I was looking through the stats, and I have done for years, and that is that it's a bit of a myth, isn't it, about the why? If you think about it, why do people not put their house to market or agents don't list properties during the bank holidays? Is it because they're not in? Lots of people are. Um, the strange thing is, if people aren't working as they tend not to do most weekends, and that's a busy period for agencies, is when the public aren't at work, they're around to sell their house and have viewings and so on and so on. So why do we always get the dip around these bank holidays when you would think logic would suggest it should be the opposite, you know? So the narrative there, I think, should change quite a lot about this, and agents are the only people who can change it. And a great time to sell your house is when everybody is free to view it, right? And not tied up with work. So why don't we get more properties available and have them showcased, especially when the weather's gorgeous and gardens are there and the lifestyles can be shown, rather than we'll wait till after the Easter break, or we'll wait till after the holiday or the bank holiday.
I mean,
Crazy.
I don't know about you, but an awful lot of people have been going away on holiday this year for Easter break. Every man and his dog seems to be somewhere foreign holidays this year. So that could be a lot that a lot of people are, and again, do remember 30,000 properties. Well, it's actually 32,000.
Yeah.
32,000 have come onto the market, which, is not that far away from the long-term average of around the mid to late 30s. So, just be aware. I mean, again, if you compared that with with pre-COVID levels, which is the turquoise 18 and the green 2019, we are ahead of those years. So let's just take that with a pinch of salt. The magic thing there, ladies and gentlemen, is it's going to be a roller coaster between now and early June. Expect it up and down, but then it will be a slow drift down through the spring, through June and July. That's the August bank holiday, and then more of a ski jump drop down to the end of the year. But again, I always find it fascinating. I say this most weeks that the shape remains the same. It just depends on how high or low it is with regard to the tide. Let's go price reductions, and we do this on a monthly basis, and because that's how the stats are more reliable on a monthly basis. And 13.4% of the properties that we got on the market reduced in March. And again, we're working on a month by month basis. Let's just remind ourselves of stock levels. So as we went into the end of March, 1st of April, 705,000 properties were on the market, and all the other yellow lines are the same stock levels 31st of March going into the 1st of April. So stock levels are higher. So we've got to be aware of that when we're putting houses on the market in terms of how saleable they are. Because as Bryan says, you've got to have them on the market, haven't you?
Can't sell what you don't list.
But again, let us not forget, ladies and gentlemen, that we are still only selling. Okay, remember, I think there was something to do with stamp duty holidays at the end of March.
Something like that, yeah.
And that's why that blue line there is the percentage of homes that left estate agents' books in March. 60.9% of them were exchanges, whilst 39.1% were withdrawals. But that's a spike. This is interesting. I've looked at this. There's always a spike in December. Okay, that doesn't mean that the number of exchanges goes up. It's just that there's less withdrawals. That's a December spike. That's a December spike. That's a December spike. That's a December spike. Or was it that one? Anyway, that will level off. But what is interesting though is this, Brian. Have you noticed that the general trend here, which is quite nice to see, it's only been recently that I've spotted that trend, is that the trend of, if you go back to the end of 23, only 50% of houses leaving estate agents' books were exchanging. It's been slowly getting higher, and the average recently for the last 2 years has gone from 53 to 54. But it is going in an upward trajectory, which is great news. But still, and I know your magic line is this: is we don't put houses on the market to market, we put them on the market to sell. Is that we are still losing? It's a black or red. It's a flip of a coin. Just poor.
Yeah, it is poor. Something else that for your viewers and listeners that I would expect them to be doing, and I say them to be doing all over, which increases the chance of getting homes sold. There's another saying that I learned many years ago: the better it looks, the better it sells, right? So we've got a bit of a spike in the weather at the moment. It's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. This lovely, gorgeous sunshine that we're all basking in. Houses look better in the sunshine. Gardens look better in the sunshine. How many of those homes, the 705,000 properties on the market, have been unsold that were photographed 2, 3, 4 months ago when the weather was shite, right? If you are going to do a price reduction, a price adjustment, then I would remove that. The price adjustment conversation is one that you have with the seller. What you're doing is you're relaunching a property. And the one thing that estate agents drive me mad about is they're always on about their marketing, right? Hence my phrase about people don't want you to market, want you to move. So there should be thousands of estate agents out this week rephotographing, relaunching properties, having a new strategy about adjusting the price, but not just adjusting the price, adjust the marketing. Because the price might not have, will be the reason that a home hasn't sold, but it's one component of 4 or 5 components that all packaged together dramatically increase the chance of that home actually being noticed. And if it's noticed, the lead comes in, the lead gets dealt with by the staff, and then the house can get viewings, potentially offers, potentially then moved. So remarketing, relaunching homes is the number one piece of advice at the moment with the weather like this. Get out there, get your cameras on, and get properties that have had an adjustment relaunched.
You're absolutely so bang on. Interestingly, when I was an estate agent, we compared the properties that had the blue skies versus the ones that didn't, and twice as many people clicked on them. And again, we're all guilty of saying, well, that's been on the market a while. If you take a new photograph, nice sunny, especially, now it's not as if it's July where the lawns are bleached out and white. The grass is green. Get your photographs.
Right, that's the point. That's the point, because you can, I mean, appreciate this technology that you just, click a button and the blue sky appears, and that's, we look a little bit, it looks a little bit fake on a lot of properties, but that's the industry at the moment. But actually, you don't do the lawn, you don't get the reflection of the sun on the front of the house, you don't get the view of the garden, get the parasol up, get the barbecue out, get photographs of gardens that are looking better, because they are the things that help people when they're looking and scrolling at a million miles an hour stand out from people. If you've got homes with decent gardens, think about that as your main shot for the next couple of weeks while you relaunch a property. Play around with it. Don't just do that. Everything I see is the same. It never changes. Front of the house, 500 photographs of a toilet, in a small bathroom. You're not selling the house on Rightmove. You're using Rightmove like you used to use the newspaper, right? Which is pick 5 or 6 really good photos, get them on there, and then get people coming to you. It's supposed to be a lead magnet, but definitely.
It's like the CV doesn't get you the job; it gets you the interview. The right move gets you the viewing. And what I would say though is if you are going to lead without the front shot, get the front shot. Probably is the second or third photograph, because people immediately
see what it looks like. Of course,
is there something wrong with it? But if you get them with a gorgeous rear shot and then second shot is the front shot, people aren't going to say, "Oh, but it's crap." Right, let's get back price reduction. So again, 13%. Which is about 1 in 7, not very good, ladies and gentlemen. When you consider the number of stock we've got on the market. 412,000 is the average asking price of a property being reduced, and 22,139 reductions. Let's move on to gross sales. Oh my word, Brian! End of the world. End of the world. Look, sales have come crashing down. Oh my God, it's 22,800, Brian. It's end of the world. 2 weeks ago, it was 28,000. Even the dogs are I don't know if you heard dogs, but Oh, hold on a second. There's something happened in the last 2 weeks.
Was it something involving a bunny?
Yeah.
It was.
Look at that, ladies and gentlemen. In fact, the drop in sales, it is lower than what I was expecting. I was expecting it to be normal around 21, 20 and a half. That's what I was expecting. And
Yeah, I
last
think
year,
the critical one is next week, right? Is when you do the report next week, what's the bounce back?
and we've got the bank holiday Monday, which is very rare for an East because Easter was quite late this year, and then
Yeah.
we've got a bank holiday weekend next week, which again is quite rare. So as the blind man says, we'll see. But again, let's just wait and see what comes out. Okay. But what I suspect will happen is we'll have a bounce up, a couple of weeks, nice, and then another bounce back down when we have the late May bank holiday. Gross sales year to date, 417,000, which is 11% ahead of last year and 18.8% ahead of 17, 18 or 19. Again, really good. The average asking price of a property selling is 358, and it has been between 355 and 360 for the last 2 years, and I'm pretty near as damn it. It's quite interesting. And that's the sales this week. Again, remember that's COVID, and that was post-COVID in the spring afterwards where things were going crazy. So again, we're going to have lower figures. Thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, I think it's the same rhetoric. We've got all of it. I mean, if your listings come down during Easter week, so are your sales, right? And the only reason that doesn't happen is if you've got really good stock that's well managed, that's looking really great, and so on and so on. I would be particularly keen, I think, for the next session that we do, if we've got the opportunity to do so, is can we see, what is the length of period a house is on the market before it actually sells? We used to look at that. I know you've got the 60% chance of selling, but what is the average time from sale agreed to, from for sale to sale agreed? That's a critical one. Because if
Yeah, the
that,
average at the moment is about seven, six, depending on where you are in the UK, because I do this I do this local stats for my clients.
yeah,
It's anywhere between 60 and 90 days, and I know that's quite a wide, but basically that has moved out compared to last year. Okay,
yeah, yeah.
as you would expect. Right. Okay. The
That
this
would sit with this then, wouldn't it? If you think about it, that time period is directly linked to this. And I appreciate this is not showing a house at 454 that was reduced to 359 to get sold. Of course it doesn't. But it is interesting that the average sale price is tracking, constantly in the 300s with the exception of 2024, whereas the average listing price is 100,000 pounds higher. So there is that, we're listing a lot of property that is taking longer to sell, and actually the stock, the bread and butter stock that is selling, the hot properties that are selling at the mid 300s, the efforts to get those on the market should be high.
Very much so. Again, ladies and gentlemen, this is so what this is telling us that the red line is the average asking price of properties coming on the market. The turquoise line is the average asking price of a property going sale agreed. Do we know what it sold for? No, we don't. But there's reports galore. Hamptons do one. I know one came out a few days ago. That is always within 1 or 2% of the asking price. Um, this is basically saying, as Brian says, is that the posher properties have a lower chance of selling. Okay, so if you do want to sell it, if you do want to sell it or get more sales, go to the lower to middle market. Look, I mean the gap there, 30%.
Well, I think
Right.
it's more a case of, I appreciate it's very easy to get buried in stats. What is the outcome you're looking for? If you're looking for increasing your business, selling more properties, getting things through quicker, and so on and so on, then a really good exercise is to look at the price gap, the price bands, and how is the performance of your business in the price brackets. So does it take you 30 days to get a house under offer at 350? Does it take you 60 to get one under offer at 450? Well, let's look at the process of getting the 450 sales down to 50 days. And then you're going to or getting
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
350s down to 20 days. There are definitely things you can do rather than just looking at it holistically. Actually, getting the drains up on some of this and finding these gains where you can get them in different price sectors. It'd be very interesting to see the performance.
I, I mean, what I do for my clients is that I must admit I'm going to try this. In the past, I've done what's your chances of selling by price, but what I haven't done is is what are your how quick a house sells by price. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna have a look at that.
Yeah.
That would be interesting. Moving on, sell through rate. What percentage of your existing stock are you shifting on a month by month basis? We do this month in arrears, and 16.32 or one in six of estate agents' sales stock for sale sold last month. And again, you'll notice that, again, I find it fascinating that if you go back and ask an estate agent how many were you selling in the boom, you'd have sworn 80, 90%. No, we were selling 35, no more. Amazing.
That's
Moving
that's total stock, right, in your cabinet. That's everything you've got for sale, and that's the percentage of that month. Agents tend to measure it against the listings that month to the sales that month, and then pat themselves on the back. And you're
Yes.
right. And then they do nothing about the stuff that hasn't been sold. It's back to my earlier point. If you've got 74, 84% of your stock that's on the market that is not moving in that month, the first priority for the new month is right. How are we going to get this stock sold? Because all the new stuff's going to come on and everyone gets excited about the new stuff. They always do. But what about the old stock? What do we need to do? What's our strategy at the beginning of May to get the stuff we've had on the market for 2, 3, 4 months? And some of that might be, Mrs. Miggins isn't that bothered about selling because she's only looking to move if she gets the right bungalow. Well, then go and help her find the right bloody bungalow, right? Because every single property that is for sale on your books is a cost liability. It becomes an asset to your business when it completes. And to get to completion, you've got to go through a process, right?
So right. I mean, again, even in the crazy years of 21, we were only shifting, only 2 in 3 of houses that we were actually had on our books. Crazy,
Well,
crazy.
it's the same. It's unfortunately the mentality that I see. And bear in mind, I've got 1,300 estate agents that I don't talk to every day, obviously, but that we interact with. And the mentality it seems to be regressing a little bit. That's all right. We've sold 20 this month, but we listed 25. Okay, but you had 55 on the market. So you sold. So what happened to the 35 you've got on the market? Are you just what?
Okay, no. Well,
Are they all not motivated all of a
I'm going to
sudden?
join you on that soapbox. I'm going to join you on that soapbox because I believe the vast majority of employed estate agents do not care whether the house sells or not. They get their fix from the listings and not losing them to the competition.
It's a bit like new clothes, isn't it? We always get excited when a new item comes through, and it's the same dynamic. It's dopamine, it's all that sort of stuff. But actually, my point is, when just stop and think about at one point in the past, that house that isn't sold, that's on your books, that is there, that you think is a bit of an old chestnut and nobody wants. At one point, the seller of that property was motivated, right? To put their people don't just put their house on the market at scale for the hell of it, right? So there was something triggered that. And we tend to lose sight of what that trigger was the longer the property remains in the market because we've mailed it. I heard the other day, well, I've mailed it out to everybody. Hang on, what? You sent an batch email to 500 people. That's not the job.
No.
That's not the job. The job is right. Who have I got that I need to speak to about this property? Or how do we motivate Mrs. Miggins or forget poor Mrs. Miggins, Mr. Miggins? How do we motivate them to reconnect with the reasons that they were moving in the first place?
I tell you now, I think a lot of it is to do with the fact is that valuers won't do their own vendor management.
Yeah, I know we've had this conversation, haven't we, many, many times, and I don't disagree with you. I don't agree with you either, but what I mean by that is that I always say it's the best person. So if I've got a really good relationship, but I didn't value the house, then maybe I'm the best person to have that conversation. But my point is, whenever you are looking at an adjustment in the marketing, be it the price, the photos, the descriptions, whatever, yeah, then it needs to be treated like a new instruction. It needs to be treated like another market appraisal because that's exactly what it is. You're about to give some advice to a seller, a client of yours that you fought for months trying to win their business. You're going to give them some advice about their price, photos, blah, blah, blah. What's the difference of doing that in comparison to doing an appraisal on a brand new property you've never seen before? You should be more educated because you've got the market statistics and the evidence of the marketing that you have supposedly done to add to what you already know about the shift of the market since the house was listed. So the advice that you should be giving somebody should be very powerful, very thought through, real quality, not you need to get 20% of our stock down today. Oh, I've got to phone Mrs. We need to get the price down. No one's, but
Mm.
and I appreciate I'm sensationalizing a little bit, but really is, this is about all about marketing. It's not about sales. It's about marketing a product. Okay. The better you do that, the product's got to look great. How many times you walk into a supermarket and go through the oranges and think, oh, that looks a bit knackered. That looks a bit old. That's a nice one. It's the same process. Refresh it.
So right. Right, let's get back to the stats. Okay. So, sell fall throughs, 5.75% of estate agents' sales pipeline fell through last month. Okay. The number of fall throughs this month is just over 5,000 or just under 5,000, and fall through rate of around 22%. Let's move on. Net sales, which is gross sales less fall throughs. Again, a dip down like we would expect. So therefore, the net sales this month, I'll just pull up the number here, 17,433. The net sales year to date is 8% higher than 2024 and 13% higher than 17, 18, and 19. Net sales as a gross well, that's the actual numbers. So like we said, gross sales as a percentage of listings and price changes as a percentage of listings. Exchanges as a percentage of exchanges versus withdrawals. Again, we're doing this month in arrears. So again, that red spike, the exchanges are now coming through on the data. And again, there's a big spike there like we would expect. And again, that's why this spike here, that last month, 60.9% of homes that left estate agents' books were exchanges, the other 39.1. Sales pipeline, 467,000. I believe that number might come down now because of the exchanges have come through. So I will revise that number when I do the next month's figures, and that probably will come down. Anything on that before I come on and look at the pounds per square?
No. I mean, it's pretty clear. It's very well presented.
Okay. So the red line here is the pound per square foot at listing, and you can see that that's been generally around that 360 to 370, 380 mark. But the orange line is where the magic happens, ladies and gentlemen, because that line matches the land registry 5 months in advance. So therefore, if you want to know what's happening to house prices, follow that orange line. And again, this is done a month in arrears. That 342 might change next month. It does. More data comes through, so that might revise itself, but it doesn't revise itself that much. The greenish line is the pound per square foot at exchange. So again, really important graph. I know a lot of people like that graph. Just a couple of extra graphs before we go. A bit of rental data. This is what's happened to private rents since 2016. And then this is what's happened to private rent by region. This is what's happened to rents after you take off inflation. And isn't it amazing that in London, rents are 11.4% cheaper than inflation growth?
Wow.
And outer rent, you wouldn't dream it, would you? You'd think, oh, that doesn't seem right. These are the stats, ladies and gentlemen, that rents in the northeast, outer London, southeast, and East Anglia have gone up by less than inflation since 2016. The Southwest, God knows what happened to the Southwest. They just went crazy. And again, I've done some statistics here for my clients on a local basis. And a lot of this, when I did have this checked, a lot of the reasons why the rents have gone up so much is the increase in the minimum wage. I was talking to Kate Faulkner, and she said the link between rents is very similar to wages, and those who are on the minimum wage tend to be more renters. And the minimum wage for people over 21 has doubled in 10 years. It's near as doubled, and that's what's driven a lot of this rental inflation.
Well, how you say that though, but it is not up to the tenant to set the rent, right? It's up to the agent and up to the landlord. So how would you as a tenant, because you've had a pay rise, how would that influence rent?
Your affordability, because what is particularly interested, I've matched average rents against average salaries. That's everyone, not the lower quartile who are on minimum wage, and they do match the percentage about 32%.
So I think I can afford more, so I'm going to go and rent a higher house, right? I'm not going to offer higher rent on the house I'm currently renting. So
now, what is particularly interesting is that so we've been poring over a lot of data recently with 20EA, and this blew my mind that between 1 in 4 and 1 in 5 homes on rentals have had price reductions in the last year.
Mm.
That blew my mind because when the data came through, I said, "Nah, they're just putting the prices up. Don't worry about that." No, putting the prices down. It blew
Mm.
my mind. There you go. Okay, that's the end of the first part of the show. Brian, do you want to say anything, or do you want to save it to the end?
No, we'll save it to the end. It's fine.
Right then, let's go to Newport. Right, ladies and gentlemen, we are using a bit of kit called Insight. Insight is a platform which comes from the firm called 20EA. They have lots of different platforms. This one is called Insight. This one is almost like Rightmove Plus on steroids with glitter balls and lasers. Rightmove Plus looks at the last year and a month. This looks at the last 5 years plus the year you're in at the moment. And not just raw data, it crunches it and chucks out some amazing stats for you. Brian and myself are absolutely massive fans of it. The data itself is considered gold standard. There are a number of the data firms out there, but if you talk to all the big agencies, this is the one they go for. I'm going to stress to you, 20EA have not paid me a penny to highlight this platform. They do give me this platform free of charge, which enables me to do the stats that you see on a weekly basis in the UK Stats Show. And also we're going to be looking at the ones from Newport. Any agent can have this bit of kit. They have few different platforms. They have a one based on a town and the surrounding postcode areas, which in my humble opinion is bloody good value for money. Now, I'm going to stress to you, do not mention my name in any way, shape, or form because I'm not on commission. But I'm an absolute massive fan of this because I'm a big data geek myself. Then there's regional ones, and then you can go for the national ones. There is also a freemium version, which gives you data, but only goes back a certain period. I think it's about 3 months, but gives you a flavor. But if you want to know how this bit of kit works, whether you're in Newport or not, follow the next 20 minutes or so where Brian and myself will crunch these numbers. So, Brian, shall we go and have a look then, mate?
Let's go to Newport, Chris.
So for the purposes of this, we are in Newport, and just so you're aware, the postcodes that we're looking at is NP 10, 18, 19, and 20. Okay, we are looking at between them, and if you're watching this, ladies and gentlemen, pardon me, watch this on a big screen. If you're watching this on a phone, you won't see anything. It will be grainy as hell, and you won't get the benefit of this. We are looking at from between the 1st of the 1st, 2020 to the 28th of the 4th, 25. We're looking at new instructions, although you can look at all these other metrics here. We will be looking at the other metrics on other screens in a bit. You will, as I said, we have switched off new builds because again, that just muddies the waters. And you can see here, the graph here is the number of listings on a month by month basis based on the color coding. And you can see, and again, let's not look in April, but if you look at March, you will see that in March, 288 properties came on the market, which is very similar to 265. And what is particularly interesting there is that the number of properties coming on the market in Newport has not changed vastly compared to probably a couple of years ago when there was more houses coming on the market. So that shows immediately that the number of listings, the uplift in listings that the UK is seeing has not been seen as much. It has gone up. You can tell here, look, in February it's gone up, but it's not gone up as much in 2025 compared to 2024 compared to the rest of the UK. Again, I'm not aware of any reasons why that is. The agents watching this might be aware of that, but stock seems quite tight, if you don't mind me saying. With regard to the average price that's come on the market, 248,000, with the number of properties that come on the market in those postcodes, 15,478. What we're going to do is we're going to look at each agent and see which agent is how well it's performing, and we're starting off with listings. So first off, we start off with Pink Move. And again, that looks like a COVID spike, which again is quite normal. There was normally one agent that put a few houses on the market in April. So, but generally, it looks like that their market share was around that 20% mark and has been slowly drifting downwards to now somewhere in the order of around 10%. Their average price is 221, which is slightly lower than the average. So therefore, they're probably going for the lower to middle market. Let's go and look at number one estate agents. Bloody hell. That's good, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know why it's in yellow because you can't see it, but yeah, it is very good. So they probably are number one now.
Well, we are going to be looking at the last 12 months just to see that. But from a growth from around 5% to around 25, that is a very, very impressive growth.
It is very good. Yeah,
Okay. I believe, Brian, that they're a brokerage model, very like an EXP, but basically based in because I did a little bit of homework. Um, but that is very impressive growth. Okay, let's go and look at M2. They've also seen some growth. I've priced 252 compared to 259. Cook and Blight seem to be in their lane, slight drift off in 24. Peter Allen staying in their lane. Hart, okay. Nuttall Parker drifting downwards. Davis and Sons drifting downwards. Bluestone Property Lettings, slight drifting downwards. Purple Bricks down. Hathways down. Yopa, Mr. and Mrs. Clark. They're part of they're a brokerage, aren't they?
yeah.
Paul Fosh Auctions. I'll just go down to number 20. Paris, Freelancer, David James. Not much happening there. Sage and Co. Fine and Country. Okay. Yeah, I'm quite impressed with that one. Let's just have a quick look and just see who's been the main players in the last 12 months or the last 16, 17 months. And immediately, hold on, I'll switch that off. So doesn't look like there's any new players. Is there an EXP coming up? Let's have a look. So there's an EXP agent there at 28. Let's just see how well they're doing. Okay. So probably not one of the best performing EXPs, no criticism. But again, let's have a look. Anything you want to say? Should we just have a quick look at the upper quartile, Brian? Just see who's
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's nothing, not huge amounts of comments for me. Just obviously, it's good that when you shorten the time frame, you get a obviously more accurate picture because you're only as good as your last month, right? That's the whole point.
Okay, so I'm looking. Isn't it amazing that only 435 properties have come onto the market which are over 400 grand? So, I mean, again, we're not looking at the posh countryside around and going up to Usk, which is really posh up there, Monmouthshire up there. But that just shows me, because we're basing it on the town, not many posh properties in the town. Okay, we'll just see who has been putting the posh houses on the market, by the way. Still number one. Well done. That's quite rare for the big agent to be also dominant in the posh areas as well. So that's good to see. Okay, let's move on. Okay. Huge amount of data here, ladies and gentlemen. Again, Brian, just fly in when you see something that catches your eye. A lot of data here, and my skill set, ladies and gentlemen, is being able to read data and come up with something that is a story. Most agents will look at this column here, new instructions, sold subject to contracts. But I think the real magic, as always, Brian, are these magic four columns here. Property will only leave an estate agent's book if she exchanges or withdraws. We'll just get rid of red row because they are new homes. Get rid of that. There we go. Good. Okay. So in the last 2 years, just up here, 61.93% of homes that have left Newport agents' books have exchanged. So basically, ladies and gentlemen, you've been paid on 6 out of 10 houses you've listed, and you've not been paid on just under 4 out of 10. 61 point is pretty good, actually, isn't it? Compared to the national figure.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
very good. Yeah.
Let's have a look and just see who the main players are. So number one, real estate. Oh, look at that, 77.67.
Well, if you look at the graph, the table below, bottom right, you can see there, excluding red row, number one have increased market share by 4%, pretty much, which is really, really good.
Here, this is the last year is the last calendar, the last 12 months back from today compared to the 12 months before that. And again, number one, And this is the thing that really is catching my eye, Brian, is that in the top 10, are they the best? 75, 7. Yeah. Okay. Hathaway's at 82. That's really good at number 14. They are a smaller agent. But this is really rare that the number one agent who's growing, and especially one that's grown market share, normally does that at the expense of not selling the houses they list.
Yeah.
That is really impressive.
Yeah.
That is really impressive. M2, that's really good at 74. So pat on the back for you guys. Pink move at 6. Let's just who's now that's interesting. Let's just move this date back, Brian. Okay. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Pink Move were, it just takes a second for it to catch up. Pink Move were the dominant agent in Newport in the 2000s. It will, there we go. So not only are Pink Move, their market share has drifted downwards, is that their exchange ratio, whilst it is above the average in Newport, and I'm not criticizing here, ladies and gentlemen, I'm just using publicly available data, is that their exchange ratio is, and likewise with Crook and Blight, are not at the same extent. And likewise, Peter Allen, and Hart at 42, that is low. That is, I mean, last week we were in Epsom, and those numbers were really tight, Brian. This is a huge difference.
I mean, I'll be having a word with somebody at Hart about their withdrawn rate. I mean, have you got nearly 60% withdrawn rate? My God.
Because remember, you add the exchanges percentage up with the withdrawn percentage, and they add up to 100% because a property either exchanges or withdraws. I'll be interested to see. Let's just see what their fall through rates are. Because again, ladies and gentlemen, if you've got sales that are falling through, Brian has reservation agreements. I'm allowed to say this, he can't. And it's an exceptional product. It will bring your fall throughs down to single percentages. And this is the more important. He actually teaches your valuers how to sell it, or we get people to buy it. Which again, there's plenty of reservation agreements out there where you get it, but your negs and valuers don't. They are truly exceptional. So fall through rates at 26%.
36%. Yeah. So you got I mean, that's.
Yeah, fall through. Yeah, and it's
You really just have to think sometimes when you look at some of those stats, you think, what are you not seeing? What are they not seeing about their numbers? Are they just happy that it's the way it is here? Well, it obviously isn't. And this is the thing. When you look at statistics like this, where they're grouped together in the same exact postcode, it completely dispels the myth of, well, this is the market here. Well, it clearly isn't, because there's other people in your town, probably 10 foot from you, with the same property, the same people, sorry, in terms of the public, the completely different set of results. So it's you. Own it. Change your behavior.
I mean, again, a big stat I like to bang on about is if a house takes less than 25 days to sell, the chances of that sold subject to contract getting to exchange, 94%. If a property takes more than 100 days to get the sale agreed, the chances of that sale agreed making exchange, 56%. Black and white. This is why pricing is so important. I would be intrigued to find out, we'll look at this, who is overvaluing and who isn't. I mean, let's just look at price changes. Okay. Bloody hell, 60. Peter Allen are just under 7 out of 10 houses that they're listing, they're price reducing. Okay. Golden Balls number one at 36. The average is 43. Yeah, okay. Who's doing it? Paul Fosh Auctions, they're at 14, but again, it's going to be an auction. Just have a quick look at everyone else. Okay. Who's at 82? Red Dragon, well done, Red Dragon. You do beat the number one agent in town. But 77 is in number one by size. That's 77. I'm really impressed with number one. Anything there that you want to look at before?
No, other than I congratulate them, because calling yourselves that when you launch is a very brave thing to do. But I suspect it's a lot down to the attitude. We're going to call ourselves number one because we're going to be number one. And I reckon that attitude doesn't change on a daily basis. It's
Okay.
like, what are we doing today to keep ourselves ahead?
I mean, they're a self-employed model. The numbers are, I suspect that probably the valuers are out all day, so there must be some form of support network for them as well. I'm making assumptions there because there's no point in having self-employed agents if they're not picking the phones up. So far, I am the number one's Number one fan. There you go. Let's just see if there's any flies in the ointment. Well, ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot of stats here. And again, let me just explain what's happening here. Um, you see, what we're looking at here is your overvaluing stats and how close you get to the asking price. We've put them in the order of the number of exchanges. When I say we, 20EA have. So the number of exchanges. So this is looking at your exchanges for the last 2 years. When a property comes on the market, 20EA will have an AVM, an automated valuation model figure for your valuation, a bit like a Valpal figure, and we'll compare what you put it on the market for to what they think it's worth. And these are just the properties that you exchanged on. This doesn't include the properties that you didn't exchange on. So in the last 2 years, we'll use number one as an example, and you can use the same as you look down that list. For all the exchanges that number one have put onto the market, they have overvalued by an average of 1.37%. M2 have overvalued by 0.69, Pink Move 2.32, Peter Allen quite high at 3.41. Next, price achieved. What percentage did you get on that exchange to the original asking price? What price did you achieve compared to the original asking price? And on average, number one got 0.94, which is absolutely massive compared to M2 at 3.8, Pink Move at 3.9, Crook and Blight at 4.3, and Peter Allen at 6.4. So if you want to know how that works, number one have overvalued by 1.37 and achieved 0.94 less than your original asking price. So you take one from the other. But a lot of people don't like percentages. So what happens here is we put that into pound notes. So if everyone put on a £300,000 house in Newport, this is what all the agents would achieve for it. The average agent would achieve 294,000 off of 300. Look at this. Number one would achieve £6,076 more than the Newport average estate agent. And if you compared yourself, I'm not going to compare it with another agent, but if you're at 6 and another agent's at -3, 6 plus 9 is 9 grand. That's really powerful stuff, Brian, isn't it?
Yeah, it's huge. Yeah. I mean, I think, we talk about overvaluing. I think I would just be a little bit more sympathetic to the estate agency world, particularly Newport, is that their marketing price, you never really know, and no agent should, exactly what you're going to achieve for a property. You hope you're going to get more. If your marketing is good and your strategy is right, then there's no reason why you can't get people bidding high, like many things in life. But generally what people tend to do is they tend to sort of pin the tail on the donkey, and keep their fingers crossed that the viewings that they get will be from people that have got that budget. And then the sellers are the ones that decide on the price at the end of the day, depending on what they've had offered. It's very interesting that we've seen a shift in the market, where buyers offering to buy a property with a commitment behind them. So one of our agreements behind them when they make their first offer are very often the chosen buyers, but they're not sometimes the ones that are offering the highest. So actually you can argue that the estate agent hasn't overvalued there because the house has gone under offer a little bit less, but the circumstances and the context of that particular offer dictated the seller's decision, or made the seller's decision for them, made it easier. If you're offering on my house at 300 grand and I'm offering on, someone else offering on my house at 295 grand, but they're prepared to guarantee their offer with a 5 grand backup and you're not, I'm quite likely to go with the offer from me. The stats will show 295 and then potentially say that the agent's overvaluing, which they're not. So I think in the context of things, but that certainly is, as a lot of these statistics are, something that should be shouted from the rooftops to solidify the number one position.
Definitely. And again, ladies and gentlemen, my daytime job is I'm a property analyst, helping estate agents read these numbers, analyze them and use them in the marketing. So if anyone from Newport wants to chat with me, then my telephone number is as follows: 07950 147 572. Right, we're just on the last run. Let's just see who agent is selling.
Do yourself a favor. If you're going to change your business, you've got to start off by changing your attitude and ring Chris.
Right. Thank you. Right. Well, look, in terms of getting a sale through, number one, take 172 days from new instruction to completion. Okay.
Well, that's just, sorry, Chris. What's very interesting is that what you've got at the top there, you've got an FSBO model at the top there, which goes to show the immediate reaction I've got when I look at that is to say, if you do it yourself, it's going to take you twice as long.
Yeah, didn't spot that one. Yeah. So here we go. Let's just come back to this. So we've got Pink Move. Pink Move takes 74 days, new instruction to sale agreed, and 212 days from. So again, not. I mean, it looks like number one have got the full suite, the top trumps, because normally, if you're number one and you're growing, something suffers. So the question is, what are you doing at Pink Move to halt that share, that reduction in your market share, increase your market share, and increase your saleability? Yeah. Yeah. But again, these are the numbers. 75 days on average to find a buyer. What's number one take 56 days. Okay. So, again, good price. Again, just proving price them right, you sell them right. Anyway, moving swiftly. Let's look at lettings. So again, let's see. Peter Allen seemed to be the number one agent. Let's have a look. Peter Allen. So they're dropping. Heart dropping. Let me guess, open rent massively increased. Look, 5 or 6% of the market, and at the moment they are knocking on the door of 25. Ladies and gentlemen, would it shock you that the number of rental properties in the UK is actually growing? It's not growing by much, but it's still growing. It's not dropping. Your issue is most agents, most landlords are going to open rent. 51.2% of landlords on last year's open rent listings were previously on the market with a high street agent. They are leaving letting agents and they're moving to. So if you are a letting agent and you want to retain landlords and attract some of these away from open rent, that is my daytime job. I use data and marketing and sales psychology to retain and bring new landlords in. So if you are that, if you're suffering, give me a shout. Let's go look at Martin and Co, who didn't do so well on the sales, but on the lettings, they're pretty dominant there. That is a slight drifting off there. Red key. So everyone seems to be suffering slightly. So it looks like number one, let's have a look. Number one rent, are they growing their lettings? Again, it's such small numbers. Okay. Okay, so I think that your biggest challenge there is open rent, Newport agents. And again, if you need a shout on how to stop that, give me a call. Final thoughts from you, Brian?
I think, like a lot of times we do these sessions, and I know some of your other guests, I know them all personally, but I mean, in terms of that we do these sessions with you quite regularly. What we're beginning to see, well, what we have been seeing is the creep, okay? The creep of new businesses, the creep of attitudes of consumers. It's beginning to ever so slightly. It's one of these things. It's a little bit like if you're trying to lose weight, you look at yourself in the mirror every day, you don't really see it. But if you don't see somebody for 3 weeks, then you suddenly see them. They go, wow, you've lost a bit of weight. You look a little bit, better. It's something that you may not see happen yourself because you're so familiar with your surroundings, but believe you me, it's happening around you. So, if you want to be optimistic about the market and optimistic about the year, you've got potential interest rate cuts, highly probable interest rate cuts, in fairness, with what's going on with the global economy. That always fuels activity. The sun is shining, get out there and remarket, be full of optimism, full of this, but you've got to look at what you can do differently, because the presentation that estate agents give to people hasn't changed fundamentally for years. What are you doing that your competitors aren't? And if what you are doing, what your differentiation is it valuable to people? It might be to you, but is it valuable to your customer? The people that you're moving, your landlord. Now, I know landlords, right? I know sellers and I know landlords. And there is no surprise why open rent are growing, because landlords are there to maximize the value of their investment, right? But they recognize entirely the importance of personal interaction and good established estate agency property management systems when the service is good enough. If the service is not good enough because you're trying to cut costs and margins by not doing, periodical assessments and looking and giving them feedback and helping them grow their portfolio, make it more tax efficient, get a better rate of return for them, they will lower their cost from you to someone that can do exactly what you do at half the price, which is what's happening. Now, the other thing I will say is when you look at the property market, one of the things since I was last on here that's really angered me is how many conveyancing firms have come out and said, what an amazing job we did for the stamp duty. Whew, we really helped our customers. That's what you should have been doing every single day for the last 100 years. And what conveyancing has finally done is admitted that they're not good enough because they have proved they can do the job and get people moved quicker. And then they come out stupidly and say, aren't we great? Look at what we did. No. You've just shown everybody what you're not doing normally, which estate agents are doing every damn day, working hours, working weekends, working beyond 6 o'clock, working, early mornings for their customers. What you lot have just done is come out and said, we don't generally give a shit, but we did when we had to. You always have to. So there's got to be a change in attitude, a change in behavior, and we'll all say it, and nothing will change because people just like the status quo. But what people like Number One have just shown, and for me, that's one of the best set of stats I've seen for a very long time because, like you quite rightly pointed out, they're number one on everything. That's very, very hard to do. But that will come down, I'm telling you, to one thing: the attitude of the ownership, the leadership, and the management, and the buy-in of all the team. And if it's a self-employed model, doesn't matter. You still got a group of people that are going out seeing customers that need to be motivated to do that. And that still comes from good, strong leadership. That is not a fluke. It's not a surprise. And then lower down, you've got, as we see in every town, mid-level corporates that are chugging along with a 36% fall through rate, a 65% withdrawn rate. But it's not them, it's the market. Do you know what I mean? There's two different attitudes in every single town. It's not us, it's them, or it is us, and we are creating our own market. Doesn't matter what's going on around us, we create our own set of results because everyone can. You create your own market. It's all about attitude. So if you're optimistic about the market going forward, don't be, because if you don't change anything, people like Number One and others are going to eat your lunch.
And on that note, Bryan, thank you for your soapbox. Exception as always. But more importantly, thank you for watching the show. We'll see you next week for week 17 of the UK Property Market Stat Show.